Jack, in about 48 hours, we will be in the Lone Star State with probably some Shiner in our cups and some barbecue on our plates. And at that time, we will be about 24 hours away or less from the start of the 2024 Notre Dame football season. It's finally here. We've been doing these shows pretty much all summer, and we've just been saying, all right, now it's this many days until Notre Dame football and that many days. And finally, it's 3 as we record this on Wednesday night, August 28th. We appreciate everybody who is watching live on YouTube. If you are in the chat, in the comments, we can see those, so definitely leave them, and we will bring them up throughout the show. If you're listening back on Apple or Spotify, we definitely appreciate that as well, as I know probably a lot of you are traveling or whatnot. Maybe you're going to College Station like we are. We will be staying in Houston on Friday night, but then we will be getting to College Station pretty early on Saturday for Jack, what will be a very long and fun day of college football. That's what we've signed up for in this profession, and I'm honestly thrilled that it's getting started because there is nothing like a college football Saturday. What say you, man?
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting so long for this. This is going to be the biggest road game I've ever covered. It's not going to be not very close. Like I said, going to go to get some good barbecue. I think we're planning on going to a nearby brewery afterwards that a friend of mine lives in Houston. Shout out Kenny, works for MLB Pipeline. I recommended. And it's just going to be a really fun trip. And we're not sleeping on Saturday night. I mean, literally, I got a 10 a.m. flight out of on Sunday where I am not going to be sleeping because we're going to be done at like 6 a.m.
I have a 9 a.m. flight. I think Kyle Kelly, you guys know him, one of our recruiting reporters at blueandgold.com. I think his is at like 7, Jack. So we're going to get to the airport for him. We'll probably finish some work duties before our flights take off. If anybody doesn't know how crazy our Saturday night schedule is, when we have well, thank God I guess it's a 6:30 local kick because we'll be in Central Time, obviously. But anytime the lights go on and we're finishing in the dark, these magazines, again, I wish I had one. I do have one. Check it out. It's right here. This bad boy that we put together. Obviously, this is an off-season issue, the preseason issue. But we do those weekly at Blue and Gold Illustrated, and we don't finish them if it's a 7:30 kick, 6:30 this week. Until what, Jack? Like you said 6? I mean, my goal is usually 5 a.m. for a PM game.
Last year, I think Ohio State, because Ohio State I wasn't used to, so I was fighting to stay awake at the end. It was probably like 5:30. Duke, I had to completely rewrite the gamer after the end of the game for obvious reasons. So that was probably 6 for me.
I went to bed because we were together in Durham, right? And we were staying with our publisher, Stu Coleman. I went to bed at his house, and Jack was still awake. And I think that was at like 5:30, like I said, maybe after 5. So anyway, it's going to be a long night. But like I said at the beginning of this, it's totally worth it because, Jack, like you said, a biggest road game that you've ever covered. I was fortunate enough to cover the 2022 season opener. It kind of has similar vibes to that, I would say. Texas A&M is not Ohio State. But in terms of just like college football and all that comes with it, Texas A&M is up there. Texas A&M is one of those schools where, and this is coming from someone who graduated from Texas, like you kind of think of the tradition and everything that goes with it, right? And I think a lot of Notre Dame fans are excited for that. So if you're going to the game, definitely tell us in the comments and tell us what you're most excited for. But I think there's, like, Jack, I have the Aggie war hymn stuck in my head right now because when we walked up to practice yesterday, Tuesday night, Notre Dame was blaring it through the practice speakers, and it's probably stuck in all the players' heads as well. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's definitely stuck in mine. Like, what are you most excited for this trip, Jack?
The football game number 1, the barbecue number 2, and number 3, probably just experiencing game day in College Station. I mean, we're probably getting there around noon. Kyle's going to be covering a recruiting event, which, I mean, that's awesome that he's going. You know, stay tuned for his coverage. We better plug that the whole day from that. And so that just kind of leaves us to just hang out and watch college football in College Station. Got it. There, I found out today there's a Mizzou person that works in Texas that I knew from the TV station who's going to be down there. I so catching up with some people I know. And yeah, I mean the game day atmosphere of just it really never gets old. Just taking it in. Especially on the road. Like obviously Notre Dame's awesome, but we get that 6 times a year. Just taking in a new game day atmosphere. You just can't beat it.
Yeah, I'm from Texas. Only been to College Station for College Football Saturday one time, and it's been 5 years. So, and that was an 11 a.m. game against the Mississippi State team whose record was, I don't know what at that time, but it was 6-6 by the end of the year. I want to say, this is Notre Dame in a season opener, and week one, dude. Like, I felt it last week for week 0, sitting in your apartment watching Florida State, Georgia Tech. It just, like, when you're starting a new season, the vibes that come with it are unmatched because there's a lot of unknown, and we're going to get to that in today's show. But there's a lot that, like, you're trying to project, and so many things come into your mind all at once in week one game. So I'm excited for that.
The feeling, honestly, like when you're watching football for the first time, like you mentioned the week 0 game, like it is almost surreal because, like, especially when you're in our line of work, like you've watched so much football that's just past football over and over again. The plays you see are probably the plays you've seen 100, like 2 or 3 times, and it's just and obviously you know what's going to happen. So the feeling of watching a game and you don't know what's going to happen for the first time in 6 months. When was the Super Bowl? How long ago was the Super Bowl? Like 6-7 months.
Over 6 months, almost 7.
It's almost an out of this world feeling is the best way I can describe it. And we got a terrific game. In week 0. 2 Notre Dame opponents actually wrote takeaways for the countdown today because it was
a good article. Check that out.
Thank you. And you know, we expect a similarly entertaining, potentially similarly scored game, and we'll get to that in a bit. Game with Notre Dame and A&M.
Yeah, for sure. And like, kind of what you were going off at the beginning there. This is why I don't watch preseason NFL football. I know you've got Caleb Williams, so that's different. And if I had someone like that, I would be like, I saw the Caleb Williams highlights and I was excited. But going to this, it's going to be the first, because I missed most of the first half of the Florida State game. This is going to be the first legit football game that I've watched 60 minutes start to finish since, like you said, the Super Bowl probably. So just the vibes that come with that are unmatched and unparalleled. The vibes that come with, and this is a segue into an ad read that, Jack, this is our first ad read on the new rendition of the Hey Horka show that we started in, I don't know, June or July, something like that. We've got a sponsor, and it's none other than Aggies Locker Room. You guys know Aggies Locker Room if you watch Mike Singer's football show with Tim Hyde. Last night they had an ad, I believe, with Mike Goolsby as well. So you know you love Notre Dame memorabilia and one-of-a-kind Notre Dame items, and you can only find those at one place. It is Aggies Locker Room. Aggies Locker Room has moved to a brand new location. Come see that new store located at 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend, right down the street from Notre Dame. Jack, I mentioned Mike Singer, and it's funny, as we were in a car with him, he came up to visit us a couple weeks ago. This is how great this location is, guys. We were driving through South Bend, kind of on our way toward campus, downtown area. And I pointed out, hey, Mike, you know the store that you mention all the time on your ad reads? It's literally right there. So it's literally 2-3 minutes from campus. If you're coming in for football season, you don't want to miss out on visiting in there because you can get all kinds of items from Notre Dame Stadium pieces, jerseys, helmets, autographs, one-of-a-kind Rockney items. You can find exclusive Joe Montana signed items and famous sculptor Jerry McKenna's replicas of the bronze statues around the stadium. Aggie gets new items all the time. If he doesn't have it in his store, he will find it for you. Visit Aggie at 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend and see the vintage helmet display dating back to 1890. He's got some amazing items that you want to see. Visit augieslockerroom.com or call him at 574-277-6363. Yeah, that's something that you guys definitely have to do if you're coming into town for a home game, which, I said we're 3 days away from the season opener, Jack, at Texas A&M. We're 10 days away from the home opener between Notre Dame and Northern Illinois in early September. So, and then what's funny about that is you're going to have a lot of opportunities to go to Augie's locker room because Notre Dame doesn't leave the state of Indiana until they go down to play Georgia Tech on October 19th. So plenty of home games coming up. Go to Augie's locker room. We're going to get into the crux of our show, which, as you guys know, we take questions from Notre Dame, blueandgold.com message board subscribers, Loose Emoji message board. I ran a pretty good thread today, and there were all kinds of questions and comments, and you could tell it was a game week because the thread was very lively. Jack and I came up with 5 pretty good ones, and we're going to start with the start of Saturday's game, Jack. This is from DCWFLYCA on Loose Emoji message board. Does Notre Dame need a hot start to win this game? And I'll put emphasis on the word need. Does Notre Dame need to come out and throw the first punch, set the tone, those types of things to win this football game?
It would certainly be helpful. I go back and forth on whether or not they strictly need it. I think the bigger need is to not fall behind in the fourth quarter, because this team, as currently constructed, is not built to, or I shouldn't say as currently constructed, as we believe the current state of the offense is going to be, which is work in progress, new tackles, young tackles, new receivers, new quarterback, new offensive coordinator. It's not going to be built to play from behind late in the game. I think it's more important to have obviously it's always more important to have a lead in the fourth quarter than it is in the first, as I realize now that I'm saying it out loud. But I think especially in this game, it's going to be more important not to be down 21-14 than it is to not be down 7-0 in this one.
Yeah. I'll take a different approach to kind of getting to the same place. I think Notre Dame can be down 7-0 as long as it doesn't fall behind 14-0. Like, I think that's where we differ a little bit is, and obviously I don't want Notre Dame, if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I don't want them to be down 21-14 either in the fourth quarter. That's a problem. You haven't asserted yourself in that football game to that point if that's the case. But I feel like if I go back to, I'm going to use Clemson as the example because Notre Dame only lost 3 times last year. We only have 3 examples to draw off of. But this is the one that strikes me with it being on the road. Notre Dame was down, what, Jack, in the first half, 15, 16 points. I mean, it was multiple scores, and it was teetering on 3 scores if it wasn't. I mean, I could pull that up easily, but it felt like Notre Dame was out of it until Xavier Watts got that pick in the very first series of the second half and kind of brought them back into that game. But ultimately, it was too much to overcome. That's what the point I'm getting at is you can't be down 10-0 or 14-3. As soon as it becomes a 2-score game, I think if you're Notre Dame, you start to worry a little bit. Now, obviously, the preferred route is go up 7-0 and then get a stop and go up 10-0 or 14-0 yourself. But if we're using the word need, no, I think Notre Dame can win this football game losing 7-0, 10-7, 14-10. Like, it can kind of stay with A&M if it has to, if that's the way the game is going. And then all of a sudden find yourself up 21-17. And then that's when you kind of say, hey, maybe we didn't strike the first punch and deliver the first knock, as you would say, but we're going to deliver the last one and we're going to win this game by 1 or 2 scores late in the fourth quarter. I could see that happening for the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, I think except for Louisville last year, that this team kind of showed to be resilient. Like even with Clemson, where like we watched that fourth quarter, it never really felt like Notre Dame had a shot to win because they weren't moving the ball whatsoever. But it was still a 1-score game, and obviously they had a chance to win against Ohio State, even though they were down 10-0 at the end of the first half. They were down, I think, 3 points, 4 points at the end of the third quarter. So there is that angle. Like this team last year, and they're even more experienced, and I think better. I think this is a better team than it was last year. They have shown last year under Freeman that they're going to keep their heads in the game and not let it spiral out of control. I think Clemson, it was a little different because they were making it wasn't like they were getting dominated in the first half. They just had 2 disastrous turnovers. I think there's a difference between that and what happened against Louisville. I do want to pull up a comment from a TXND that
And
is an
I've
angle
got
that
one
we
from Jake
probably,
after that as well. So let's
yeah,
go. Which one are you going with, TXND first?
the hot start quiets the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's a good point. I think we probably should have thought about this. In our initial answers. But it's tough because like if you get a score and a stop, I think this is a good enough crowd that like down 7-0, the defense is out there. They're still going to be raucous. They're still going to be loud. You would have to like I think it would you wouldn't really quiet this crowd until you're up like 2 or 3 scores, in my opinion. And I don't think either team is going to be up 2 or 3 scores at any point in this game.
Yeah, that's a good because I mean we've got predictions here, and I know there's some Notre Dame fans who are predicting a 2-score game, but I think there's a serious chance, like you said, Jack, where it's not a 2-score game until that final score that makes it one, and that's what Notre Dame wins by. If it wins by 11 or if it wins by 14, it's because they got that final score and that was it. I could see that for sure. Speaking of 2 scores, Jay Carr says Notre Dame was beating Georgia 10-0 at Georgia, just couldn't finish. That's kind of why I'm saying, yeah, you would love to throw that first punch. You would love to get out early, but it doesn't mean you win. And if you have to rope a dope a little bit, man, and be Muhammad Ali, go ahead. Like you can win that way. And again, I'm not saying that's preferred, but I can very much see as I'm going back and forth in my own mind, like who's going to win this game, Jack, because I actually do not know. I could see a scenario where Texas A&M goes ahead 7-0, and that place is jumping, and you're thinking, oh man, like this is what everyone feared. But I could see Notre Dame easily answering, and then you're 7-7, and then maybe it's 10-7 A&M, and Notre Dame takes a 14-10 lead, and A&M goes back ahead. Like I could see that back and forth type of game, and that's why at that point the delivering the first blow thing, like okay, A&M delivered the first blow, but
Yeah.
what did it mean for them? I think that could go either way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think especially in games like this where it's week one, yeah, you haven't hit someone else in so long. You're so juiced up. It's prime time. It's a top 20 matchup. I think what can happen sometimes is you get out to that hot start and then you kind of run out of steam. You're like, all right, we're up 7-10-0. Now what? And by the way, we saw this last week against with Florida State. I just dominating. You didn't watch the first drive time, but FSU marched down the field. Really no Georgia Tech resistance whatsoever. We're like, all right, this might Georgia Tech hadn't even have the ball yet, but we're like, all right, Florida State just marched down here. They did a wacky fake field goal, weird 2-point conversion play. It worked. They're up 8-0, and then it's like, all right, how's Georgia Tech respond? And Georgia Tech responded by marching down with even less resistance somehow, and they didn't allow a touchdown the rest of the game until like the fourth quarter.
Yeah. You know what that tells me is, and I put this in the Hey Horka thread, the answers to me are much more important than the first blow. Unless that first blow is 21-0 in the second quarter and you're like, holy cow, Notre Dame is just the way better team and that's what it is. Like that first blow, absolutely. You put that one down, but the answers to me are what's going to define this football game. If Notre Dame can keep answering Texas A&M on the road, if it has to. Now, there's a scenario where it doesn't have to keep answering, and that goes back to a very good Notre Dame defense. But if it has to answer, and it does answer, then I'll use that word one more time. That's going to answer a lot of questions that I have about Notre Dame in my mind going forward with the rest of the season is, okay, you answered in this game. I'm pretty sure you can answer against, quite frankly, maybe everyone that's left on the schedule.
To sum this up, I think here's a good way of summing this up. I think especially in season openers where again everyone's juiced up, everyone is anxious, everyone wants to start hot. The second and third score are more important than the first.
Yeah, that Georgia Tech touchdown drive, and I was monitoring before I got to your apartment that day. I was monitoring the game. I texted my dad after the Florida State one, 8-0. I said, Dad, this might get out of hand, like with what we think we know about these teams. But when Georgia Tech went right down and said, no, this is going to be a ball game, that answer to me was huge. And it's a major reason why they won that football game.
And not only the touchdown, it's the ensuing stop. Like after the first drive, like Georgia Tech dominated A&M up front, not only on the offensive line, but on the defensive line. And that was the opposite of what we saw in that first drive. And we hate to keep coming back to that example, but it's like I really think Georgia Tech, or not Georgia Tech, Florida State thought they were going to win by multiple scores. The first drive confirmed it in their minds, and then they took the foot off the gas, and they couldn't put it back on until it was too late. And I think that's what both these teams really have to avoid.
I think what Notre Dame has going for it in that regard is, I mean, at this point, they've probably seen the betting line and they know that they're technically an underdog. So if they do get that first touchdown, I think they're going to be hungry for the next one in a sense, not in a sense of we're going to beat these guys, but let's beat these guys and let's prove some people wrong. So definitely a good conversation to start with. And yeah,
I do think one more thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think you have to be careful with the "we're going to prove people wrong" mantra. I think if I were Marcus Freeman, I would lean more into let's just play our game and let our play do the talking. I think that in an environment like this, any kind of like overboard adrenaline or overboard, we're gonna stick it to Vegas, something like that, could lead to mistakes in execution in this heat, in this crowd. That could get Notre Dame into trouble. I think the approach. I agree with like the approach after scoring first is so important. The approach I would go with is like, all right, we scored first. Let's just do the same thing again. Ignore the noise. Just do the same thing again.
And then after the game, once you do win, then you can be like Georgia and say nobody believed in us. And like,
yes.
I don't know how much they believe that because I think it's quite ridiculous. But it just goes to show it's a strong emotion. I don't know what that emotion is when people are skeptics of you, but even the best team in the country for the last 3 to 5 seasons displays it afterwards. So if you win this game, Notre Dame, go ahead and say that. But I agree with Jack. Do so after the fact. Don't do so in game or before the game or anything like that. So now we're talking offensive strategies, Jack, and this is from X-Ray 93. I'll tee you up. If you want me to take it first, just let me know. But what is Notre Dame's best offensive strategy against Texas A&M?
No, this was a great question, and I would love to tackle this first. I think the biggest key to the and I'm starting like a weekly three keys to the game column, replacing 10 thoughts, which I thought was good. It just took up way too much time. That's the kind of column you can do when you write 10 articles a week and not 25. But the first key to the game, I think, is staying ahead of the chains, because as Mike Denbrock is the offensive coordinator, like he knows there are so many things you can do to slow down a pass rush from a play calling standpoint. You can run jet sweeps to prevent the edge rushers from going too far upfield. You can run the ball and run play action. That'll buy your quarterback more time. Screens of every kind. RPOs like you mentioned on the board. There are so many things you can do. None of them work when it's 3rd and long. So I think the biggest thing is acknowledge reality. And Mike Denbrock is smart. He knows that while Anthony Knapp and Sam Pendleton and Emil Wagner for that matter, we talk so much about Knapp and Pendleton, we forget this is Wagner's first start too. That they're not going to win every true pass set rep against this A&M front. Like the quote from Denbrock earlier today, and I'm paraphrasing this, was like, are they going to win every battle? No. Are they going to lose every battle? No. We have confidence in them, but the implication is like, we got to do something to help them out. So acknowledging that, using all your tricks, the quick game, all that stuff I mentioned to slow down the pass rush, but it doesn't work if you get yourself in a 3rd and long situation. So I think that's the biggest thing to avoid.
And if I don't have the numbers in front of me, and last year is last year, but that was kind of a big deal last year, right? Was the 3rd and longs. Notre Dame just had no chance on them, and partly because the pass catchers were what they were. And this year, I think you have more of a chance on 3rd and long, but you never want to be in 3rd and long. So I totally agree with that. I think we're going to see a heck of a lot of Riley Leonard running the football in this game, and probably a lot of games for Notre Dame. Obviously, you don't want him to put himself in harm's way early in the season because you want to have this guy for 12 games. And if you want to win a national championship, 16 games, it's a long season. But man, based on some of the clips that we saw coming out of fall camp, Jack, and what we saw in fall camp, I mean, I came on one of these shows and I said the best thing that I've seen so far in fall camp was Riley Leonard being healthy. That guy is one of, and I know you totally agree with me, your best weapons on offense when the ball is in his hands. And he's going to have to hit some short, intermediate, maybe even some long passes in this game for Notre Dame to win it. But I think setting the foundation, somebody asked me in that Hey Horka thread today, what is Notre Dame's first play from scrimmage on offense? And I said, little misdirection, maybe Jaden Greathouse running across or a tight end moving to the other side of the line. Zone read, Riley Leonard, go get 6 yards, go get 7 yards, maybe even 8, maybe even a first down, and say, hey, we have this all game if we want it. We're going to hit you with some other stuff, but Riley Leonard's going to be able to run for about 5 yards whenever he wants, maybe even more. And the more times you do that, Jack, the more opportunities you give him to break the long one. And in the biggest game of his career to date, I would say it was against Clemson last year in the season opener. Duke upset then number 9 Tigers. He's the reason they won that football game because of that 48-yard touchdown. I know the defense was great and the turnovers. I think Clemson had like 4 or 5 turnovers. It was crazy. But if you go back to the play of the game in that game, it was Riley Leonard with his legs. And I think that's maybe not just the best offensive strategy for Notre Dame in this game, but that's kind of what you got Riley Leonard for, if he can stay healthy, is to do those types of things.
Well, that's actually my third key to the game. It's no leash on Leonard today. I think you obviously want to be judicious with Leonard for a good amount of your games, and like you don't want him running 15 times against Army, for example, or Navy or something like that. Like this game, you want to completely unleash Leonard. I think I don't care how many hits he takes right now. You pull out all the stops to win this game because I think this game is that important. I think
Greg Wasserman does care how many hits he takes, but look, how about this idea, Jack? I would rather Riley Leonard kind of, take on his own contact yards downfield than drop him back and get hit by Nick Scorton or Shamar Shepard or Shamar Turner, like that.
Stewart.
Those hits, or Stewart. I'm sorry about that.
Very good.
Those hits would be more detrimental to Riley Leonard saying, hey, let me lower the shoulder. And what was the comment that he gave us, Jack, in media availability this week? Is like, he said the only thing that's different about this week compared to fall camp is that he's finally going to get hit.
Yeah.
And the way that he said it, he said it in a way that, like, I think he's craving that and he wants it. And again, you're putting yourself in harm's way every time that you open him up like that. But you brought him in to open him up like that. And I mean, how many rushing attempts did Jaden Daniels have last year? I think Riley Leonard might not match that, but it's going to kind of go down that path.
The other thing that Riley said the last time we spoke to him, I asked him, like, how do you kind of strike the balance? Because one of my favorite things about him is that he will put his shoulder down. He will dive at the sticks or at the goal line. And that's major. That's my quarterback energy. That helps you win games. It helps you in the locker room, all that good stuff. I think that is a big reason why he is so well liked among his teammates, because he puts his body on the line. And I think I lost my train of thought. Sorry. The Leonard's response, I should say, sorry, totally lost my train of thought there. Leonard's response to that question was like, as soon as you start thinking about it in the game, you lose. It's just all instincts with him, and you don't want to tamp down those instincts in any game, but especially this one. And to your point, when he got hurt last year, the 2 big injuries he suffered against Notre Dame and LSU was in the pocket both times.
Yeah. Yep.
LSU, Louisville, I should say, in the pocket both times. Like, that is the much more dangerous position for a 6'4" quarterback with an ankle injury history to put him in. And I think letting him take those hits. And to Greg Wasserman's second comment, like I'd run Love and Price a lot too. I think there is a bit of a soft underbelly in this A&M defense. Like the edges are great. The linebacker Torrey New York is great. Other than that, they lost a lot up the middle of that defense, like the tackles and linebacker Edgerrin Cooper, such a good player, is gone. So really testing that with who you believe are your best two offensive linemen in Ashton Craig and Billy Shrouth. Just running it up the gut, softening those edges a little bit, I think is the way to go too. And that kind of blends into my first point of stay ahead of the chains, I think.
And then Texas ND says run sets up the pass. Absolutely. I think you're looking at Riley Leonard throwing maybe 20 passes max in this thing. Like I'd be shocked if it goes over 25. If I had to take 16 to 20 or 20 to 25, I think I'm taking 16 to 20. I wouldn't be shocked if it was like 21. But
there's a part of me that thinks he could get to that point because yes, the run sets up the pass. You also want the other way to soften the defense is with the quick game and with some of those screens. Leonard is also a quarterback, and I think you and I both saw this on the tape. Leonard is also a quarterback who will play much better if you get him in a rhythm with quick throws early. He's not a quarterback you want to have throwing 15 passes and they're all 15-plus yards downfield. I think he is much better throwing 30 passes and 15 of them are downfield than 15 and all of them are downfield, if that makes sense.
For sure. And I think that's why you'll see the first passes. I don't think his first couple of passes, unless Notre Dame has something up its sleeve, are going to be more than 5 to 10 yards down the field. Just get the ball in a playmaker's hand early. And I'm a little skeptical of Notre Dame's defensive backs as well. I don't know if Notre Dame has the pass catchers to exploit that. Maybe Mitchell Evans. But, hey, man, if we saw some little tunnel screens to Chris Mitchell in fall camp, or there's definitely ways you can get Jaden Greathouse the ball quickly, Jordan Faison. I think that's what you see early. And then if Riley Leonard is running, if Price and Love are running well, like Texas ND says, you'll see a couple shots. He's got the arm. And if Chris Mitchell or Bo Collins or somebody does get behind the defense, Mike Denbrock's not going to be afraid to dial that up. So,
yeah, that was actually my next and final point on the subject. I think especially late in this game, if you do keep yourselves in those like second and short, first and 10, even like third and 5 when you're in position to go for it on fourth down, like take your shots downfield to create one of those big plays. Because I really think the difference in this game could be one big play. We know it's going to be low scoring. We know it's going to be a bit of a rock fight. Or we know. We strongly believe it's going to be low scoring, a bit of a rock fight. And if you're especially if you're in a slog offensively, go play action, throw the ball up to one of your playmakers who you've talked up all fall and all offseason, the Chris Mitchells, the Bo Collins of the world. Take your shot. If it falls incomplete, it's going to fall incomplete. I think Chris Mitchell getting behind the defense could be the difference in this game. I really do.
Jack Sobel knows a thing or two about segues. He's not at the controls here, people, but this is literally what we have next on the docket. A little rapid fire over under. I believe these are all from Slevmania, is a user handle on our loose emoji message board at blueandgold.com. We have, I think it's 4 over under kind of prop bet type things for this game, Jack. And the very first one is over under 80 receiving yards for Chris Mitchell. I think I'm actually taking the over, and I said it on the message board, so I'm not just being prisoner of the moment here. I think if Notre Dame hits one of these deep shots, it's going to be to Chris Mitchell. I don't know if it's going to be for a touchdown, but I could see him having a 50, 60-yard catch, maybe even a 50, 60-yard touchdown, and then all he needs is a couple catches after that. I think I'm taking the over. I think Chris Mitchell, while I'm kind of leaning Jordan Faison, and I'm a big fan of Jordan Faison, I'm calling my shot on him to maybe lead Notre Dame, and if not receiving yards, I think catches. I'm putting out a shot there. But in this game, I think Chris Mitchell ends up being the leading yards getter for Notre Dame through the air. I'm going over.
I'll take under, but I think it's close. I think that I don't know who's going to be the leading receiver for this team. I think that there's going to be a lot of quick game, especially early, with the Jeremiah Loves, the Jaden Greathouses, the Jaden Harrisons, Jordan Faisans, even Bo Collins to some extent. I think he's going to be better underneath than most realize. He looked more athletic and a little more twitchy in fall camp than I think we thought he would be coming in. But like you said, that big play late in the game. I'll give you an example. Cotton Bowl. Mizzou's offense is just a train wreck through maybe 3.25 quarters. They get one play action deep shot dialed up. Really just a two-man route. 7 or 8 man protection. Marquise Johnson, the speedy wide receiver, had like 10 catches for 25 yards per reception or something ridiculous like that last year. They hit it, gives their offense confidence. They score later in that drive. They march down, score again. Game's over. That if the offense gets in a slog, dial up that one deep shot, get your confidence right back up, and then I think that could win you the game. And I think Chris Mitchell is the guy to do that.
We've got a lot of under in the chat, Jack. Dennis says under. Greg says under. Spencer under. And then Ryan finally says he's going to get 80. So you took over, huh, Jack?
Yeah, I took.
Or you
I
said
took,
under.
I took under, but close.
Okay. I could see a scenario where he has like 2 catches for 75 yards. So that would be the under, but one of those catches could be the big catch that you're talking about.
That I think is what I'm projecting. Like one 45-yard gain and one maybe like 15-yard curl, something like that.
Yeah, I could see that.
2 7-yard catches.
Especially since we know, as somebody said it, Woo Riders DG, Jordan Faison is at the top of the depth chart. It says or. I think it's like
ors are alphabetical. I think either that or it's just 50. Well, either that either
you think
ors
it's
are
50-50 then, or how do you think?
I mean, it might not necessarily be 50-50. Like it could be 60-40 or 70-30 or something like that. Like the or means both will play. It doesn't mean both will play an equal amount. But like either there was an incredible coincidence on the depth chart, or they did the ors alphabetically, because all the ors are in alphabetical order.
Yeah, they're probably alphabetical, but if there is an or there, I take it as, and I don't think they're that big of a deal, but I take it as it's a little different than like Jaden Mickey and Christian Gray. Christian Gray is ahead of Jaden Mickey without the or,
absolutely.
right?
No, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And who knows? It could be 60-40 Faison is ahead. Like
we
Don't
absolutely.
know.
It could be. All right, staying on the same side of the ball, Notre Dame offense. Will Jeremiah Love have at least 2 touchdowns in this game? Over, under 1.5 touchdowns for J Love. Jack, I'm going under, and I'm wrestling in my own mind with this one. But I think it comes down to Riley Leonard being that running threat in the red zone. And if Notre Dame gets down there, my mind says Riley Leonard has a better chance of scoring a rushing touchdown than Jeremiah Love. And that's why I think at the end of the year, Riley Leonard is going to have more rushing touchdowns than Jeremiah Love. Not to say that Love's going to be a bad back. He's going to be awesome. Probably going to see some 20, 30, 40-yard touchdowns out of Jeremiah Love. But I don't think he's going to score 18 touchdowns like Audric Estime. I think a big share of those are going to go to Riley Leonard. So could he score a touchdown in this game? Absolutely. Wouldn't be surprised if he was minus money to do that, or maybe like plus 115 or something in that neighborhood. But to score 2, you got Riley Leonard on this team. I'm going under.
I go back and forth. So this one and then the last one, I'm like, if it's over, Notre Dame's going to win. If Jeremiah Love scores two touchdowns in this game, I would be very surprised if that happened and Notre Dame did not win the game.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
Or really, if any individual player scores 3 touchdowns, if scores 2 touchdowns, if Notre Dame scores 21 points, I think they win the game. Like, wow. I want to pull up Spencer Kane's comment from 8:38 p.m.
Okay.
The defense is is outstanding. I don't think people nationally are denying that. It's just that no one trusts Notre Dame's offense. Because we haven't seen it, and because their tackles are so young right now, and inexperienced and unproven. I think that if the offense can get to 21, and if that involves Love scoring two touchdowns, great. If not, fine. Like if that happens, I think Notre Dame wins the ball game, and I have a hard time believing that someone's going to score 2 touchdowns and no one else is going to score one.
You've been listening to a lot of Tim Hyde. If you think 21 wins for sure, he's been saying the first to 20. So, and I'm not far off of that line of thinking. I think it's going to be that type of ball game for sure. But yeah, I agree with if Jeremiah Love hits 2 touchdowns and Notre Dame loses, something catastrophically wrong has happened. I think he scores 1. Obviously, Notre Dame still has a chance to win, but 2, and I think it's wraps. So,
yeah,
this one was easy for me, Jack. Defensive side of the ball, 0.5 sacks for RJ Oben. I think he gets one. I think he comes out in his first Notre Dame game, and it's such a hard position, defensive end, because you can get bottled up for 50 snaps in a football game, but I think he's going to win cleanly enough on one of them to get to the quarterback. And Connor Wegman is elusive, and Al Golden gave him credit for that when we talked to him. So it's going to be difficult to sack this A&M quarterback, but I think Notre Dame has the edge when you look at the 2 lines on that side of the ball. And like I said, you only need to get to him one time, as good as he may be, and he hasn't played a lot of football at this level. We have to say that. So there probably will be an instance where he winds up on his back, and I would not be shocked if RJ Oben is the one standing over him. I've got him getting a sack.
Yeah, I'll say sack as well. I think the point about Wegman you make is a good one. His best trait, in my opinion, is the sack avoidance. That doesn't necessarily mean moving around. It doesn't necessarily mean he's a super good athlete. He's a fine athlete. He's not Riley Leonard or anything, but he's fine. Mm-hmm. But the big sack avoidance thing with him is the ability to stand in the pocket and get rid of it and make plays. Like that's a huge trait. And it's why a lot of people believe like sacks are a quarterback stat. The pressure to sack rate is super low with him. But on the other hand, Oben, if you watch the tape and you view the game log, some of the stats, like he plays his best in the biggest games. I think he steps up when the lights are brightest. We've heard a lot about how he's had a really good fall camp, and I think I think he gets at least one.
For sure. And now one more to end, still on that side of the ball, because we're talking A&M's offense and subsequently Notre Dame's defense. 1.5 turnovers for the Texas A&M offense. Will the Notre Dame defense get multiple turnovers in this game? I'm actually going under. I think they're going to get one, but when we say rock fight or slog, that doesn't have to mean sloppy. And I think there could be a lot of punts in this game, field position battle type of stuff, but not a whole lot of turning the ball over, because it's a week 1 thing where you're really just trying to feel the other team out and just win any way you can. You're not going to try too much or do any of those types of things. So maybe it's 1 pick or a fumble, but I'm finding it difficult to find multiple in this game, Jack.
So this one, I think even more than the Love one, if the over hits on this and Notre Dame loses, I would be stunned.
Yeah, same.
Beyond stunned, because like you said, you made a good point that the coaching staff has a pretty strong idea this is going to be a low-scoring game, and therefore will do anything to avoid turnovers. Because in a low-scoring game, turnovers lead to the most points. That wins the ball game. I think my second key to the game, kind of going off this, it'll come out tomorrow morning, is opportunistic defense. Like if you have this is one of those where you can't afford to drop interceptions. If you have the ball in your hands as a defensive back, you got to make that catch, because it could be your best chance to score points in this game. If you can get the ball in opposing territory, you can punch it out, if you can strip it, that is going to be your best chance to win the game. And I'll say under, I'll say 1, because I think Colin Klein's a really good offensive coordinator, and he's not going to put the ball in harm's way. I think Connor Wegman only has, I think, two interceptions in his career. He hasn't really played I don't think he's really played a defense as good as Notre Dame yet, but 2 interceptions in 8 starts is not nothing. And I believe at least one of those interceptions against Miami was tipped. So he's really good at avoiding turnovers. So I'll say 1. This was a really good defense at creating turnovers last year, and I think they get at least 1, but not at least 1. I think they get 1, but I think it stays at that.
Yep. Switching gears, and we're going to get to our next question, but Notre Dame superfan just joined, and we do a countdown, Jack, of days until Notre Dame football. You mentioned yours article from earlier today. Go check that out at blueandgold.com. Really good kind of synopsis on what we learned about 2 Notre Dame opponents in week 0. That you did a really good job with that. Going way back to 100 days until Notre Dame football, Jack, I did an article on Notre Dame's record all time playing in front of 100,000 fans. So Notre Dame superfan is asking, what's the stat? Is it true road games? I would need to pull up the article, but the way I remember it is it's just all games ever played in front of 100,000 people anywhere. And that has equated to true road games, yes, because you're talking Tennessee, you're talking Texas, Michigan a lot. There was a lot of Michigan on there. And Notre Dame is 2-11 all time. It has only won 2 games in front of 100,000 people ever. And I think one of those is at Michigan. And another is at Tennessee when Mike Goolsby was captain and returned a 26-yard interception to the house for a touchdown at Neyland
Was this
Stadium.
ever, or was this since like 2000? Because I have a hard time believing they've only won 1 game or only played that many games at Michigan.
Well, I think stadiums, I don't know if Michigan Stadium was 100,000 people. Let me look. It might have been since something. You might be right.
I think I have to believe it was since something. Oh, yeah, I have the article.
Me too.
This is
Since 1999.
1999. Yes. Okay.
So in the last 25 years, and maybe I stopped it there because I couldn't find like attendances earlier than that. But how many times do you think Notre Dame played in front of 100,000 people before 1999? I guess I would have to check.
I think
capacity.
Michigan Stadium has been that big forever, I think.
Wikipedia is very trusty if you believe that it's accurate. Because Wikipedia will tell you like the different capacities at different times.
Yeah, Wikipedia is a useful tool that we're all conditioned by English teachers to believe that it's not, and it's a useful reference.
All right. Well, usually on the right-hand side, it says like the eras and the capacities. It says 107,000 from 2015 to present. But anyway, you corrected the stat as you rightfully should. In the last 25 years, which matters more than the 25 years before that or the 25 years before that, right, Notre Dame is 2-11 in front of 100,000 people. So it doesn't happen often where Notre Dame wins these types of games. Like I said, that was just an aside, and I wanted to get to that question before we go to the final 2 from Loose Emoji message board subscribers. They have the right of way when it comes to asking us questions for this show. Getting into some subjective, opinionated type of stuff now, Jack, before we finish with – we're going to finish with something that is more Saturday-centric, Texas A&M-centric, but big picture – and this is the exact way that B. Smitty8 phrased it on the message board. And I know what your answer is going to be to this, and I'm probably going to side with you a little bit. But is this a must-win for Marcus Freeman's long-term job security? He prefaced the question with, and you agree with this, he really hasn't won a game like this yet in his first 2 years. But does that make this a must-win, Jack? I don't think it does. And I know you're probably going to say no.
Yeah, I mean, we had the must-win argument last week. We don't need
for Marcus Freeman, though.
Yeah, no, I know. We had the must-win for Notre Dame season argument last week. And I said no. I'm still going to say no for this. I think we can't talk about job security for him until the end of this season at the very earliest. I think it's a must-win for his immediate reputation. We're gonna, like, every website is gonna write the Marcus Freeman can't win the big one on the road story. I mean, we talked about this, earlier today. Like, 2 biggest road wins to this point are at Duke, and he needed a miracle to do that, and probably at North Carolina in 22.
A couple basketball schools, Jack. Those are a couple
Yeah,
basketball schools.
and the two biggest home wins were teams in Clemson and USC that, in hindsight, were much worse than we thought they were at the time. And it's just those questions, fair or not. I personally think I lean more towards not than most. I think, but fair or not, they're going to persist and they're going to get louder after this game. So long-term job security, no, but it would amplify the concerns many people have about him as Notre Dame's coach.
The basketball thing sparked my interest, Jack. Pretty much all of his road wins. Marcus Freeman is 5-4 on the road in his 2 years as Notre Dame head coach. 4 of the 5 are against what I would call basketball schools, man. Duke, North Carolina, Syracuse, NC State. And the 5th is a very, 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 very bad Stanford team in the regular season finale last year. Those are your 5.
They played about as poorly as they could. Sorry for cutting off there. They played about as poorly as they could have possibly played in the first half of that Stanford game, and they still won by what, 33? Was it like 56-23 or something like that?
Yeah, 56-23.
So that was one where, as long as they didn't completely lose their minds for 60 minutes, they only did it for 30. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a must-win game in any sense of the word. But I mean, for the immediate future, he could lose this game, win out until Florida State, and we're gonna be in the 5th Marcus Freeman honeymoon phase. I think it's very possible. I think all the overreactions after week 1 are going to be very loud if he loses this game. And I said last week, I think they're going to be overreactions because I don't think the matchup favors Notre Dame for several reasons. Pass rush versus offensive tackles chief among them. But the outside noise is going to get louder. It's a question of if the team can ignore it.
A couple things here. You got to define long-term job security because, Jack, you mentioned the question offline that we had before this. And it was funny. It was in a group chat with multiple other people, and we were talking about this job security thing. Marcus Freeman is not losing his job after year 3, after winning 2 bowl games in the first 2 years and having a winning record. Like, the progression is there enough to where I think he would have to go 3-9 to lose his job, or 4-8. Like,
I think 5-7. 5-7 is the bare. 5-7 is the bare minimum for bottoming out that we even think about having the conversation.
And we can't even
like this major scandal somehow.
Yeah, of course. And we can't even in our wildest imaginations fathom 5-7 for this football team.
No.
And I know you were probably saying the same thing in 2016. Everyone that's listening to this, and Notre Dame went 4-8. It's not going to happen. Not this year. Not with these coordinators, these players, this personnel. So you get past that, and then you go back to the crux of the question. This game, I totally agree with you. For the perception of what he is or what he can be, you feel like you really got to win this thing. The pressure is off. I mentioned last week why winning this kind of feels must-win territory, because I think you roll the table up to that Florida State game, and now we have seen Florida State, and I feel better about Notre Dame winning that game than I did a week ago, and I already thought Notre Dame was going to win that game. So if you can just win this game, if you're Marcus Freeman, and then, of course, take care of business, like I said, in every game after that, boy, you're sitting pretty. But if you lose it, you're 5-5 on the road in your tenure, and you still have, like I said, not won a game. I want to get back to that point, Jack. He hasn't won a game like this. And you and I both agree, because this came up in that offline question that we had. Clemson, USC, those are his biggest wins of his tenure. 2022 Clemson, 2023 USC. That Trojans team lost 5 of its last 6 regular season games. They ended up being bad. Clemson, I hear it from you guys on the message board all the time. Dabo Swinney is cooked. Clemson's not what it was. You guys are probably right.
I hear it from you too. So
yeah, I hear it from you too. I tried to hold out on that, and now I'm like, dude, Dabo, what are you doing? You have to take transfers. Notre Dame is taking 8 of them. You're at Clemson. What the heck are you doing? That's a different conversation. But that program's not good in a good direction is my point. And that's your best win. And USC is your best win. I hear it from the people all the time. USC's cooked as well, right? Lincoln Riley's going to be on the hot seat. Blah, 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 blah. People keep saying that. Those are your best wins. You have to win this one. You have to win this one if you're Marcus Freeman.
I don't think we can say that until after the season is over, because he'll have more chances. Like, if they go 11-1, no one's going to care about it if the one loss is to A&M, because they'll still have,
for sure.
Because they would still have the USC on the road. They'd still have Florida State. They'd still beat 2 pretty good teams in Louisville and Georgia Tech. Like,
that Florida State game is looking more and more like Clemson USC. That's the token, hey, this is a big win, but not really game.
Well, sure.
Like to me.
But and if you go 11-1, there's also the playoff. Like, there are so many things that can happen. That, like, my mantra all offseason is the offense relative to usual offenses get better over time throughout a season. It is more drastic with this Notre Dame team because of several factors, and there will be plenty of opportunities to make this a more than successful season if they lose this game. Like, you can't start talking about, like, I tweeted a quote from Riley Mills earlier today that he was asked, like, about the gravity of this game. He's like, yeah, it's a big game, but we understand that the season's more than week 1. And Marcus Freeman said this earlier today too, or not earlier today. Or Marcus Freeman said this Monday too. Like, yeah, it's a huge game, but whatever happens, we got to regroup and move forward because we got 11 more opportunities. Like, the comment from Notre Dame superfan, like, I think there's an excuse for beating A&M. It's because you lost 2 NFL tackles. There wasn't really much to do to replace them. Like, we believe that there just wasn't really a good enough offensive tackle in the portal. Like, they have challenges on the offensive line against a dominant defensive front. I don't think they can make up for that right away. Like, they can win the game in other ways, but I think they can't make up for that deficiency directly. Like, and Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner are going to struggle in this game. I think we just need to acknowledge that reality. But come USC, they might be pretty good players, and I think they will be pretty good players. And the experience they gain over the season will make such a difference in how good this offense is and how good this team is, to the point where we'll look back on A&M and be like, I can't believe we were overreacting to this game. I think that's going to be the course of the season.
I just think, because I want to bring it back to Marcus Freeman, like, there have been press conferences, Jack, where I look at him, and this is over the course of a season, and I'm like, man, this is weighing on him. I can recall Monday after Marshall, Monday after Stanford. That's 2 years ago. Last year, Monday after Ohio State. I mean, he wanted that one bad. So many people did. Yeah. And you literally let it slip away. I just think Monday has potential to be one of those if Notre Dame doesn't get this done. I think he's sitting there thinking, again, I got to go through this again.
And I'm here to tell you that if anyone else on this team takes that mindset of, we did it again, same old, self-fulfilling prophecy, they'll lose one of those games to Florida State or Georgia Tech or Louisville or USC. They will make the playoff, and we'll be dealing with this over again. Like, looking through the lens of 12 of, like, New Year's Six Bowl for last year, because that's what the playoff is. It's the New Year's Six field. So, like, Ohio State didn't kill them. What happened after Ohio State did? Like, the Duke loss, if they lost that game, would have killed them. Louisville killed them. Clemson killed them.
It's compounding, though. You still have to factor in that Ohio State loss, just like you would factor in the A&M loss if that happens.
You don't factor in the A&M loss. You factor in the letting the A&M loss spiral. if you just do, I know it's easier said than done, but if you ignore the noise and don't let the A&M loss spiral, if you lose that game, it doesn't hurt you.
I'm more of along the lines of thinking just don't lose to Texas A&M. Just don't do it.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly the easiest thing to do, but you have to, if you lose that game, you have to acknowledge that some things didn't go your way, and you still have plenty of opportunities to accomplish every goal you set out to do. And I think
Sure.
Ohio State didn't kill them in 22. Marshall did. Ohio State didn't kill them in 23. Louisville did. It is the response to the adversity that has been lacking the last 2 years, not losing the big game itself.
I think Texas ND at the very beginning of this said, drink every time Horka says answer. It's the answer, Jack. It's the answer if you're gonna lose to A&M or
this game. This game is a huge game for a variety of reasons, but if you lose the game, you're not dead. You're nowhere near dead. You have every opportunity to go 11-1 this season. If you do that, no one's going to care about A&M.
My last point on all of this is I'm going to put it out there, and if you're a Blue and Gold subscriber, you've already read this. I did a game-by-game prediction. I'm not going to go through that, but I will say that I think this is a 10-2 football team, and you laid it out perfectly why. Not to the same extent, because if they lose to Texas A&M, I don't think the next loss is going to come till way later in the year. So it's not that they didn't respond to losing, but I think there is still an element of this program right now where it is in year 3 under Freeman, where if they lose this game, I'm pretty confident saying, I think they're going to lose another one. Like, I don't know they lose this right off the bat, the one that everyone wants them to win, and then they rattle off 11 wins in a row. I get it. It's a gettable schedule, but that's like, and conversely, if they win this game, maybe in my mind, I say they are those guys. Maybe they win 12 in a row. This one means a lot to me for a lot of reasons. I just think, and you said something earlier to me, Jack, where you were like, it would answer a lot. There's that word again of what this team is in year 3, as opposed to what they were in year 1 and 2 under Freeman. If they can just win this one, it would be okay. These aren't the guys that lost to Louisville or Clemson or Marshall or Stanford. I think they're so far past that. Now it's past, are you the team that lost to Louisville and Clemson? And that's what I have to see.
No, I'm certainly not saying that a win wouldn't be huge. That's why the thing I've been repeating is, like, they have more to gain in this game than they have to lose. And I know that's a sunny side look at the whole thing. But based on the rest of the schedule, based on what we know about this team, again, they are going to be a better team relative to the rest of the country in week 13, week 14, because there are 2 byes, than they are in week 1. And
my last point. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going.
One more thing. If you win the game, that tells me you beat a pretty good team on the road in a tough environment despite that. And that tells me, oh, okay, this is a really, really good team. And this team can and probably should go 12-0, because win or lose, they're going to get better over the course of the season relative to the rest of the country. But if you lose the game, then I don't think a loss would change anything we think about this team, which I think we can agree that this is a pretty good football team.
I don't know. I think a loss, but we'll see. But what I was gonna say is, maybe I'm just greedy, and I totally agree with what you said. Is there's more to gain than there is to lose. If I'm a Notre Dame fan and I'm someone in that locker room, I just want what is there to be gained way more than having to deal with the Riley Leonard quote or the Riley Mills quote that I'm staring at that says, if you're going to sit there and sulk after one game, then you're not meant. Like, I don't want to be in that place if I'm Notre Dame.
No,
I want to be in the place of everything to gain, like you said, because it's just like right there and they can do it. I would want to be in that space. So
no, of course you would rather win. No one's disputing that.
Let's transition to the last question here. How are they going to do it? So Tofuz from the Loose Emoji message board asks, And he's kind of putting out a hypothetical for us, Jack, that we mentioned at the very beginning of this. We're going to be right until 5, 6, 7 a.m. So you're sitting there, it should say early morning Sunday, after a convincing Notre Dame win, and you're writing about that. What would the score need to be? So if we're writing about a convincing victory for Notre Dame, what does that score look like to you? And how do the Irish get there?
Yeah, I think forcing turnovers on defense, number one. Making that one big play on offense, number two. Staying ahead of the chains, number three. What would the score need to be? Probably something along the lines of 21, 17, 14. Or convincing?
Convincing.
Really convincing.
Scoreline.
Convincing scoreline. Probably like
one.
Probably like 24 to 10.
I like that. I went one further and said 31 to 10 or 13. Like if they can get to that 30 mark, I'm like, oh, that's what would change my mind. I'd be like, okay.
I think
this
really convincing, maybe even like A&M only scores 3. Like really convincing would be like, okay, this defense is somehow better than we thought it would be, and we thought this defense would be really good.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So maybe like 24 to 3 is the really convincing margin.
All right, I've got the same margin. I would say like 31 to 10. If A&M got into the end zone once in their own house, I would still be like, okay, this Notre Dame defense is very good. And what Notre Dame would do to get there, stop the run. So in the losses last year, I have visions of Phil Maffa, Jack, taking one to the house and saying, oh no, why is that happening for Notre Dame's defense? And Jawar Jordan doing the same thing at Louisville. Like those are the images that I can't get out of my and for that matter, let's go to the home game. TreVeyon Henderson, 60 yards to the house. Like those are the moments to me that are ingrained in my memory from Notre Dame's 3 losses last season. So none of that, none of those lengthy scores. You make A&M earn everything on the ground in its own building. And that'll make it tougher for Connor Wegman to throw the ball. I think that totally throws a wrench in what Colin Klein wants to do if you stop the run and kind of control the game that way. That's how only 3 points end up on the board in your scenario, Jack, or maybe just 10 in my scenario. And then offensively, it's just finish drives. Like you said, 24. That's probably 3 good touchdown finishes to drives. And if they get to 28 or 31, you're finishing in the red zone because not all of those are going to be lengthy touchdowns. So for me, it's stop the run, finish your drives with touchdowns, and there is a world in which Notre Dame wins this game by 21 points. I do believe that.
Yeah, I think, and we want to clarify, like there are people on the board like accusing us of like not giving Notre Dame any chance. Like we're giving Notre Dame a chance. We're just saying that A&M might have a better chance than Notre Dame. I like that. That's what Vegas believes. That's what we believe. Just based on the matchup. I can't believe how many times I'm saying it, but I mean our job. A wise man on the Mizzou beat once said this. Like our job, if the fan base is riding high, our job is to bring you guys down a little bit. The fan base is super down. Our job is to bring you guys up a little bit. We are the neutral voice who is going to be just a little more neutral than the highs and lows of being a fan. That's our job. The way I see it. I think I want to bring up a comment from Paul. Like, why are we ranked 7? Why is Notre Dame ranked 7? Because they have one of the 5 best defenses in the country and an offense with a lot of potential. The fact of the matter is that the offense is not going to realize that potential in week 1. They could be pretty good in week 1, in which case I would say, oh my God, this offense has the potential to be really great. But the more likely outcome, I think, is the offense struggling in week 1. They could win despite that because their defense is awesome and their offense has big play potential that they could show in flashes and that could get them a touchdown. But, that's all it is. It's potential. So I think they're going to look much more like the 7th best team in the country at the end of the season. I think they're going to look like maybe even a top 5 of the team in the country at the end of the season. But I just don't know if they're going to look like that right now.
Yeah, that's all fair. I mean, these preseason rankings are potential. That's what they are. If A&M loses, it falls out of the top 25, but it has all the potential in the world to climb back in and maybe even be a top 10, top 15. I think that's probably their ceiling team at the end of the year. If Notre Dame loses, it probably falls out of the top 15, maybe around 15. Has put all the potential in the world to climb back into the top 10, climb back into the top 5, maybe if it runs the table. So totally agree with you there.
Whether they lose this game or not, like they're gonna be in the college football playoff field when the first rankings come out if they win the rest of their games until then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all we had in terms of the questions. I think we brought up a lot from the chat. Like I said at the beginning of this, Jack, you can feel that we're only 3 days away, less than 72 hours, I guess. I mean, maybe less than 70 hours at this point. So it's here. It's arriving quickly, and we could not be more excited. As I said at the beginning, Jack and I will be there in College Station along with our recruiting reporter, Kyle Kelly. So definitely go to blueandgold.com for all of the coverage of this huge week 1 game. And if you subscribe, which you already should be, but if you haven't yet, 50% off an annual subscription. That's a value of $4.99 per month. You should definitely take us up on that deal. It's running through the end of the week. By the time the game kicks off on Saturday, you will be out of time for that deal. So make it the last thing you do tonight. Make it the first thing you do tomorrow. If you have waited till Friday, put it on your to-do list. Subscribe to blueandgold.com. 50% off an annual subscription with the promo code kickoff24. So, Jack, that's the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to kick off this season in College Station. I can't wait. I will see you there, and we will see all of you guys same time next week, either talking about a huge Notre Dame win or the sky falling because Notre Dame has lost. We will see what that is, but we appreciate you guys for joining in.